to the second slide because I was talking regarding the barter system and exchange of goods. Yeah. So what previously the social fabric was quite simple. So basically the exchange of goods, as I was mentioning, that there was no concept of currency, and people trusted each other. That maybe like for if I want to exchange a rice for some cloth material, then I believe that that person is not going to cheat or not going to deny me of the services. Next slide, please. Yeah. Yeah. So the thing is that, as I stated, the advantage is that there was no common medium of that it was quite simple, and no one need to keep of complicated mathematical stuffs like how should you assume the value of a good and something. But there are quite a number of pitfalls. So like if today I say that I want to exchange rice for some golds, basically I am sort of undervaluing the price of gold, because a kg of rice is not going to match a kg of gold in price. So there was no way you can account the value of a good, and there was and also if there was no common medium of exchange, like if I want to trade with someone who is not in my vicinity, someone who is outside in a different country, then it's really impossible to go for something like a barter system. And also this entire concept of exchange of goods is based on trust. So I trust that you will definitely turn up and give your goods to me, and it's not that when I give my goods you just run away with that. That's it. There was too many pitfalls of this barter system. So in came the concept of currency. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so what happened is in around 770 BC, so Chinese came up with this concept of metal currency. So the basic idea was that you can now trade goods, pay salary to people, and do transactions, and you can also set price of different goods. So now you can say that price is like 20 coins per kg, but on the contrary, price of goods could be like 1500 per gram or something like that. So you can quantify the value of goods. And now there was a common medium of exchange. So next slide, please. But as we will see that with metal currency went out of existence and in came paper currency. So initially paper currency, the value of paper was tied to the value of gold. But then with time, the fiat currency came into being, which was not actually tied to any physical asset. So basically, the government had the power to print currency, but with some regulation and checks and fiscal policy in place. So the life was quite easier with paper currency, which became a common medium of exchange. And also the thing is that the currency is valid until and unless if there is someday the country stops accepting your currency and just loses trust in that, then you are doomed, because this entire thing of relationship of this function of money is relying on the relationship of the individual with the economic community that is accepting money. So there should be some agreement, some consensus that I definitely rely on this value of money, the currency which is given to me, and also the currency printed should be in scarcity, otherwise the currency won't have any value. So what happens is, like, if you're printing too much of currency, so there would be inflation, and actually each note won't have any value. So today whatever I'm buying it for rupees 10, now the same item won't be would be like too costly, like 10 rupees won't have any value. So there should be some scarcity. So the scarcer the good, the more value it's going to more value you can attach to it. And also the property of ownership is like, when I pay you 10 rupees or some 20 rupees, I transfer the ownership to you. So like as it's written in the banknotes as well, that the ownership is transferred to the bearer. So it's something like that. It's not that I give you the money and the same money I can give it to someone else. So this possibility of double spending is not there with tangible assets. Yeah, next slide, please. So as I was mentioning, that this problem of consensus and double spending is not there with tangible assets like gold coins have got stamps, paper bills have watermarking. But what happens for digital goods? So digital goods is just something which is existing online, right? Nothing tangible, intangible stuff. So I can say that today I have transferred some X coins to you, and I say I have transferred some X coins to some other person, Alice, and like who is keeping track? Because this is not something like you are holding on to it, right? So it should be like validated, or some way there should be some checks by which this shouldn't be the thing that I am purchasing two items using same X coins. But it shouldn't be the case that that leads to a cheating or double spending. So in comes the concept of trusted third party. So suppose you think that there is some one server or a centralized bank which keeps track, like, yeah, today I write on the internet that I am transferring some 10 digital coins to Alice, and I'm purchasing goods, some goods like maybe a car or something, and that's one transaction. But then when I have to purchase maybe another good, like a bag or something, then I cannot use that same 10 coins for to purchase it from Bob. So I need to spend another set of 10 coins. So from my account, 20 coins should be debited when I am trying to purchase two different items. And there should be someone who should be auditing this thing. Yeah, next slide, please. But the thing is that when an economy is based on trusted third party, the term trusted is quite finicky, because where you never know, like this person can or do a lot of malicious stuffs. Like it can just tamper your transaction, or just collude with another party and say, yeah, this transaction has failed, so that you end up spending more than what is required. And also it could manipulate the accounts. This problem of account manipulation existed in history as well, and there were several scams which destroyed the very financial fabric. So the very famous one is the Lehman Brothers, which filed for bankruptcy in 2008. So the loan which they provided to the borrowers, there was no proper documentation. India, the one most popular scam was in 1992. SBI went bankrupt, and there were several um, fraud cases lodged against them. And apart from that, I just stated there are several such examples which cites that what happens when you put your trust on one central organization, and there could be internal manipulation going on with no one to audit. So, yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so the very idea is like, can we do away with this thing called as trusted third party? So the idea is like you just do away with banks, but then if you just do away with something like where a very economy is based, so that means you are sort of manipulating with the macroeconomic policy. So you now have to think of something else when you think that I will be my own bank, I will be keeping account of all the money and transaction which is going on. But that is not actually quite possible, because uh, sorry, the PPT went off. Yeah. So the thing is that what happens is like if a trusted third party is eliminated, then you should be accountable for your actions. But then what happens that if your house just burns off and your computer just gets destroyed and there is no backup. So we need to come up with something like where we have this or transactions maintained in a public sort of accounting ledger or a ledger book, which is accessible by anyone existing in this network. or maybe in a society. And the thing is that one cannot come and just tamper the transaction. And also at the same time, it is auditable, like anyone can come and check whether the transaction is satisfied and whether there was some double spending or not, but without the presence of any other party which is controlling. Yeah, so next slide please. Next, yeah. In comes the concept of cryptocurrency. So this cryptocurrency is nothing but it has a backing of it's a form of code. So basically, you just digitally write some program which encodes some logic, and this logic is called as a smart contract. So basically, it's nothing. So if you think that I want to buy some land from a tenant, then I need to sign a contract, some paper contract where the terms and conditions are written, that for how many years the lease is given and how much rent I have to pay and all these things. Nothing that since this is a paper contract, then this could be destroyed. So what you do is you can encode it in a programming logic which is self-enforceable. Like no one has to come and ask you that this is the terms and contract. This will be done automatically, and also at the same time the people are trusting this sort of thing. It's not that someday this entire fabric gets destroyed because people are losing trust and suddenly maybe Bitcoin just crashes and there is no value attached to cryptocurrency. So we will see that how cryptocurrencies, people gain trust in cryptocurrencies because of the security and privacy guarantee that is provided, and also of the fact that it is auditable and no one is going to tackle it. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. So as I stated, some of the requirements of a decentralized currency, which I previously mentioned, and the points are just reiterated. So there should be no double spending, and transactions should be recorded publicly. And just in the next slide, please, I will explain that how you can realize this decentralized cryptocurrency. Like some of the questions which needs to be answered, like who is keeping track of this ledger and who is actually accounting for the transactions, and how a double spending attack is prevented with with this digital cryptocurrencies, and is there consistency, and if you are involving, like anyone can come and audit and in the network, then how is it going to be robust? Is it fault tolerant? Like even if today I just crash out of the network, is it going to kill the entire network and cryptocurrency is just going to crash out, or still it is going to be resilient and people can still go on transacting? So let us go to the next slide, and let us see like how this thing works in place. Yeah, so before moving on to the construction of how a blockchain looks and all, let us dig in with the crypto primitives, which ensures this security guarantees. So let us first check, like we have hash functions. So hash function is nothing but actually it's like a commitment to a particular value. So consider that you have in the input domain, you have a string of any size, maybe suppose of length L, which is quite large. And then you map this string to another short digest of shorter length, which serves like a one-to-one mapping from the input domain to the output domain. So so basically what does hash function involve? So there could be two ways of generating thing. So one could be like you do not use any secret key for hashing input values, and the other way is like we use a secret. We do not use any secret key for hashing. So in Bitcoin, we do not use any secret key for hashing. So it just keyless hash functions, which we discussed. So some of the properties is like why it's quite secure. Secure is like hash functions are one way. So by one way, we mean that given any value y, so if we define a function f where f of x is equal to y, so given a y, it is quite difficult to retrieve the value x. So by difficult, I mean computationally hard. So that means any adversary with quite high computation power, it cannot basically it can retrieve this value x with very negligible probability. But then I will discuss like why we say that is computationally hard. I mean, what's the inherent meaning of this thing. Second property is this second pre-image resistant is like, even if you know one such value x where you know that y is equal to f of x, it is computationally hard to come up with another such input value x dash, where again if you do f of x dash, it's giving you the value y. So basically, it's very difficult to come up with another such pre-image. And collision resistant is a stronger guarantee. It says that it is computationally hard to find two distinct such input pairs like x and x dash, where both of them leads to the same value y. So if a hash function is collision resistant, then automatically the other properties are guaranteed. So what does it mean to be computationally hard instead of information theoretic hardness? So previously I mentioned that our input domain was quite large size. Like you can consider a string of length L, and then you are mapping it to a string of length shorter length K. So basically you see that there could be many such inputs in this input domain which can map to the string of shorter length in the output domain. So this is like pigeonhole principle. You can think that there could be several such values which could map to a particular value in the output domain. So there could be chances of collusion. But then we say that how can we guarantee? So we say that with high probability, sorry, not high probability, with negligible probability, there is a possibility that we can face this sort of collision, like two inputs from the input domain match to a particular output in the output domain. So the thing is that you should come up with a good hash function. So let us discuss what can be the property of a good hash function. So first thing is that it's really easy to compute. So it shouldn't be like you have some overhead, a huge overhead which needs to be there for computing this thing. And also at the same time it is hard to find pollution. So let us just see how why it is hard. So I will discuss this birthday paradox, which says that suppose the output is a binary string of length k. So if the bit string is of length k, then the 2 to the power k possibility in the output space. So what is the probability that there exists two such pair of inputs, where suppose like x and x dash that and gives to the same function value y. So it is possible with the probability of 1 by 2 to the power k. And then what is the probability that you end up selecting two different inputs which doesn't lead to any collision is that 1 minus this probability, the simple math. So but then if you have m such distinct inputs which were hashed to the output domain, so now you can select such input pairs by which there could be collision. So number of pairs existing is just n choose 2. So probability that these two outputs were same. So now we see that probability of selecting two different inputs which leads to different outputs is 1 minus 1 to the power 1 by 2 to the power k. And for m choose 2 such pairs, it will be just raised to the power of m choose 2. And so if we want that there are two inputs in the domain which map to the same output out of this m distinct pairs, so it would be just 1 minus this factor. But then if we take m of the order of 2 to the power k by 2. So note that this bit length is quite large, same like 256 1024. So even if we make such if we make this n number of queries which is of around 2 to the power 128 or 2 to the power 256 2 to the power 512, then only we get a probability of collision that is around half. So that means like if you go on querying for a large number of times, you can end up getting a collision. But this is not feasible within a limited computation bound provided to an adversary. So next slide, please. Yeah, so like how cryptographic hash functions plays a role in blockchain. So it could be used as commitment. Like I said, that if you are given a value y, and tomorrow I say that it is basically if you take some f of x and the value y, so you will get a guarantee that there is no other x dash because of this collision resistant property, that there cannot be any other x dash in which this y can decommit. And next is the property of hash puzzle, so it's puzzle friendly. So basically we are not considering this entire input domain x which is mapping to y. We have a separate thing which is considered like if you break the input to two parts, like suppose you have this x and you have chosen a k which is chosen from a distribution with high minimum entropy. That means it's quite random and the information leaked. So the bound on the in the lower bound on the information leakage is very low. That means it's very random and you actually cannot guess with a negligible probability what input has been chosen. So given this k which is chosen, so it is, and given the value y, it is infeasible to figure out the other half of the input, that is x, by which you can say that this is actually the pre-image corresponding to this value y. So basically we will see that this is the concept of nonce which is coming when we do a mining in bitcoins. So that's why I said that you are breaking this pre-image into two parts. So one part is known and it's coming from a very random distribution, like you select it uniformly, and the other part also guessing that is quite hard, very infeasible. And next property is that of a hash pointer. So hash function can be used as a pointer to a particular value, because when you design a hash table and we say that I have hashed it and this matched to a certain row of this table, then this is unique with a very high probability because of this collision resistant property. And we see that how it is this hash pointer is used for designing a data structure that will be used in the blockchain for designing the ledger. Yeah, so next slide please. Yeah, next slide. So now I just discuss how the data structure works and what is decentralized identity management. So before I go to how this blockchain data structure looks like, so in the year 3rd January 2009, this Satoshi Nakamoto mined the first Genesis block, which led to the birth of the term blockchain as well. So I'm not going into the details like what was written and all those things, but then I will show that how this block by block this ledger was constructed and how this hash pointer enabled this creation of a new data structure. Yeah, so next slide please. Yeah, so as you can see that block 0 forms the genesis block. So consider for assume that for Bitcoin it's the block which got mined on 3rd of January 2009. Now you just do a hash on this block, this particular block. So basically that forms your header of the next block one. And each block is divided into actually two parts. You have this header part, and which header points to the previous block, and the data part. Basically the data part is the one which is consisting of your transaction, and at the same time you have to figure you have this nonce timestamp and all, which is used for forming the which is used for hashing, and that is being again forming a pointer to your block 2. So basically in this way, like each current block is pointing to the previous block, and that leads to this tamper resistant property, because once you change a block in somewhere in the history, then that gets cascaded to the blocks in the future time. And if and that would be reflected, so any inconsistency will be reflected in the hash value because the pre-image won't match, assuming that we have selected a very good hash function. So there would be the pre-image won't match, and then you can detect that someone back in the history tried to tamper with this transaction. Yeah, so next slide please. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, thanks. So now let me discuss this concept of Merkle tree. So like I will just come like why Merkle tree is used. So you have got this set of transaction, and now you need to have some guarantee that whether this particular transaction is belonging to a block, and also you need to ensure that any no one is coming and tampering with your transaction. So how do you generate a guarantee that you just store a short digest? So for that, given this in the data part, you have all your set of transactions, and what do you store in the header part is that you just take all this transaction in the leaf level and start creating a binary tree. So how this binary tree is created, like you start hashing on each of these transactions. So suppose I have this L1, L2, L3, L4. So in the first level, what you do is that you take hash of each of this value, and in the next level you take pairwise and do a hash of again on these hash. So like if I have hash of L1 and hash of L2, then the next block on top of that, that is hash 0, is basically hash of L1 and hash of L2. And similarly, this hash 1 block is again hash of hash 1 L3 and hash of L4. And in this way, you can create a binary tree structure where the root is basically serving as a uh, commitment to all these transactions which were provided in the leaf level. Next slide, please.
Ma'am, I want a favor from your side. Can you please stop for 5 minutes? I need to switch my destination, so I will rejoin back in the next 5 minutes. Is it
Okay.
fine? In the meantime, please
Okay.
you can have a water. Okay, ma'am. I'll just resume again within 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello. Subhra madam, can I ask one question?
Yes.
Okay. So we know that hash code is not reverse engineerable. So what is the reason for representing the complete tree structure for each part of the information and making it a binary tree structure? Can we reduce this concept, means some part or some intelligent approach to some part of this information so that the complexity for implementation will be minimum?
Okay, so like you don't want to have a binary tree structure, and you want something constant size, right, for this membership proof and everything.
Yes. So that
Uh,
we know that it is not reverse engineerable. So can we apply some part so that the complexity could be minimized, or there is compulsion that on each part this hashing technique need to be applied?
okay, so you mean that why do we use hash and not something else for guaranteeing
No,
uh,
no, no,
this?
no. I am asking about why to apply on each part. Because if we'll even apply this hash function on some part, the complete information authentication could be achieved. Because ultimately at the root point, the total information need to be authentic. So even if some
So
part is
yeah,
hashed,
so
then it will provide also a good level of security. But if you'll apply this hashing technique on each and every part, it will definitely provide higher level of security. But it may be computationally intensive. So that's why can we compromise some way on some part so that the complexity could be minimized and security level can also be achieved?
maybe there can be some way to optimize, but I'm not sure like why computation wise hash would be a overhead. So first of all, that hash is also reducing your size, right? Because when you try to give a proof, so suppose I submit a proof and that my transaction is basically a member of this block, then what can happen is that so that's the part of my next slide. So suppose in that particular tree, suppose given a transaction maybe L3, so now I need to prove that L3 is a part of this tree. So now what do I need to provide as proof is that just hash of 1 1, hash of 0, and the root hash. So this is the proof. I mean, if the size of the tree is n, then you just provide a log n proof. But also you have to need to see that what is the size of each information block provided. So that is why hash is reducing the size of the proof as well in general. Of course you can say that I can come up with something better where which is quite more optimized than hash. So basically accumulators are used for this stateless blockchain, so by which you can have more compact witness I mean more compact proofs generated rather than going for this log n size proofs provides you. So basically, there is a way in which you can design more compact proofs in a more efficient way. But at the same time, you need to check that given if I need to reduce the computation, I'm not compromising on the privacy part as well. Because here you can see that when I am providing a proof, right? I just need to maybe reveal my transaction, but I'm not. Maybe if you are someone if it's a privacy preserving ledger which you want to design, okay, so now it's you can say that there is no privacy because the transactions are made public in the block and anyone can come and audit. So suppose you're designing a ledger where you need to hide your transaction, and in that time I cannot just reveal my transaction. So basically hash can serve as a commitment that yeah, basically I know a pre-image corresponding to the hash which serves like a proof without explicitly stating what was the transaction. So there are for factors like this, and of course, as you stated, you can definitely go for more optimization. And there's this thing. If you are interested, you can read accumulators. So there is bilinear accumulator, and that's the underlying thing is that how they are reducing this size of proof from if height of the tree is n, then you had a log n size proof. Now you can have a constant size proof and with a shorter digest. So is that answering the question, or like I went really off track?
No, thank you.
All right, ma'am. So can we continue with the PPT?
Can you do one thing for me? Like, I have joined from the mobile phone as well. So, can you allow me to share the screen?
You are using, if you can do it, you can, ma'am. Is it fine with you?
I'm not sure. Like,
If you are joining the session through the mobile phone and you can share through mobile, it would be okay, ma'am.
is
We
my
can try.
is my screen visible? The PPT.
Just let me stop first.
Yeah, I have joined from mobile. So, can you give me the sharing rights?
You can, ma'am, try once.
No, but actually, I am currently rights to present since I joined from my mobile phone. So let me disconnect and let me hang up and see. Okay, maybe you can present my screen because I'm not. I don't see I've got the permission to present.
Okay,
Maybe you
ma'am.
can give me a permission to present because you can see that I've
Ma'am,
come
just a minute.
through.
I'll make you call. Just a minute.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, Dr. Kaur, can you give me the presentation rights? Hello. Hello. Hello.
Ma'am, maybe she said that she's going to call you so that I think so.
Just a minute, ma'am.
Not
That's what she's
showing
not
the
supposed to.
presentation, right?
Ma'am, your screen is not presented yet. You can try. Yes, ma'am, it is visible. Your screen is visible.
It's visible, right? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It's visible, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what I was discussing this Merkle tree. So as there was a question like um yeah, so the this slide I was talking about, like.
Yes, ma'am. Screen is visible, so you can continue with your screen. And in case if you have any problem, I am here only. I'm in the session. You can just tell me. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Many
Thank you,
thanks.
ma'am.
Yeah, so as I was explaining this Merkle tree thing, like how you can prove membership of that your particular transaction is part of this block. So this root of the Merkle tree is stored as a proof in the block. So we will see how it is stored in the header part. So basically, even if without providing the transaction, you can supply just the root of the Merkle tree, and the data part is supplied when one needs to verify whether this particular transaction is part of the block or not. So basically there's a concept of simple payment verification. So in that case, light client needn't download the entire block thing. They go for this just verification of the header. So in the header, what we do, we just provide the root of this Merkle tree. And in case someone asks me that whether your transaction is part of this block, then yeah, is my screen visible? So hello.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, something happened. So yeah, so in case I need to show that L3 is a part of this Merkle tree, so you just provide L3 and #11 #0, and the root of the Merkle tree is already available in the block as a proof. So how does one check whether L3 is a part of this particular block? So what it will do, it will do hash of L3. Using hash of L3, it will come up with this value #10, and you with a hash of 11 and hash of 10, because hash of 11 is provided in the proof. Using these two hash, they will compute hash of 1, and since hash 0 is already provided, so it can now compute using hash of 1 and hash of 0. So it will just do hash of 0 and hash of 1, and it will get root of the Merkle tree, that is the top hash thing. So in this way, what will happen is that you can verify whether your transaction is a part of this block or not. So basically this is the structure, like how blockchain with Merkle tree looks. So as I stated in the header, you have this previous hash, timestamp, nonce, and transaction root. So transaction root is basically a accumulation of the commitment of all the transaction which is existing in this block. So basically this covers up hash function, which is used in blockchain, Merkle tree. And next we come up to this concept of digital signature. Like, as you know, like in case you need to claim coins, then you need to digitally sign and say that you are the owner of this coin and all these stuffs. So basically what is digital signature doing? So suppose you have some message and you want to say that I want to sign it. So in a normal sense, suppose this message is like a paper contract and I have put my signature. So the problem with this normal signature is that anyone can forge or anyone can sign on my behalf. And suppose today in the paper gets destroyed, it gets burned, then there is no value like where my signature was. So digital signature makes our life easy. So how it's done is that I can generate a random secret key, and using this secret key I can generate a public key which can be revealed to everyone out there in the world. So I'm not going into the details like how secret key and public key generation is done. I think it will be covered in the cryptographic primitives which you have it in one of the lectures. So suppose consider the secret key is something which you keep it to yourself, and public key is something suppose like your email ID which you reveal to everyone else. And secret keys maybe suppose the login credential of your maybe Gmail account or Outlook account. So now what you do is that using this secret key, maybe using this password, I just sign and say that this message is signed by me, and digitally signed by me. And when suppose I need to verify your message, I have your email ID or maybe other credential which is publicly available, and now using this public key I just check whether the message was signed by you. So if I can verify that, then that means this has come from your part and you cannot deny it. And what we need here is that signatures cannot be are existentially unforgeable. Meaning is that given like if we have a challenger adversary game, suppose you are the challenger, I'm an adversary, I provide you with several such set of messages and you just sign and provide it to me. Now if in case I can come up with a separate message signature pair which was not seen previously, like I come up with a different message and a different signature pair, that means you can break the signature and it is existentially forgeable, because I can sign a message which I haven't seen before or which you haven't signed. So that means your signature scheme is weak. But here we use elliptic curve digital signature algorithm for blockchain, which states that and given even if you have seen several such message and signature pair, you cannot generate another message signature pair, which guarantees that it is an unforgeable signature. Like without a secret key, you cannot generate another signature for a particular message. And next we come to this concept of decentralized identity management. So you must know that in Bitcoin permissionless system, you remain hidden, right? You do not reveal your identity. You are identified like a public key or an address in the network. So what is actually this? So basically your identity is nothing but just a public key. Maybe you can consider that in a normal society, it's like your Aadhaar number or social security number. So basically if no details is attached to it, it's just a number and I just know, I do not know who are you, what's your address, what's your age, or something like that. So basically this guarantees that in the blockchain network you remain pseudonymous. So I just want to know, like, if I'm going too fast and you need some clarification, so if you want you can ask questions in between. Hello?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. You can proceed.
Yeah, so if you have questions, just interrupt and say like if you're finding it hard to follow or something. So I will just stop and reiterate whatever I have mentioned. So if you want to verify a message, you just what you do is like you given the public key, you have to hash the public key and use it as a address by which the coins to the particular account will be transacted or something like that. So why do we need hashing of the public key? So the very concept, the very reason given in the community is that if someday post-quantum cryptography becomes a reality, and like if quantum sorry, not post-quantum, I meant that if quantum computers become a reality, then it would be very difficult to have this, like a secret key private. Like it would be very easy to break the get or retrieve the secret key from the public key. But if you come up with something which is post-quantum secure, like a hash function which is resistant to such attacks, so you would hash this public key and then send it out in the network. So basically retrieval of the secret key becomes difficult. So with this thought in mind, the Bitcoin creators did hashing of this public key to generate this address. So basically given the address, if I don't have your public key, I just know that this is where I need to send the coins. But apart from that, nothing else will be revealed. So that's what I said, that so this public key is like your identity in the network, And it's not that you use the same public key for transaction. So what is encouraged in the Bitcoin network is that you generate different set of secret key public key pairs for each new transactions. So that means you have multiple aliases in the network. So it's same as like you having multiple email IDs. So suppose you have a work email ID, a personal email ID, a group email ID. So suppose 3-4 email IDs, and you consider that these are not correlated. So in some way you anyone cannot track, like with a very negligible probability they can say that all these addresses map to you. So this makes pseudo anonymity a reality in Bitcoin network, and this is what basically highlights the concept of decentralized identity management. Next, I will talk about like Nakamoto consensus and proof of work, which forms the basic concept like why decentralized ledger is a reality. Till now, what I spoke is like about a block structure and how the block looks, and it will give you the impression that only one particular person can propose a block, verify it, and check. And it's actually not giving a sense like how in this network anyone can come, anyone can push a block and get it verified and push the transaction and gain rewards and something like that. So till now what I discussed is like how this blockchain is ensuring a tamper resistant transaction and how you can prevent cheating. But how to do a decentralized ledger, like who can participate and which blocks can be appended, and how the proposer of a block gets selected, and where do you append a block. So like if I say like always append at the end of the chain, so what do I mean end of the chain? Like is there only a single chain which can exist? Can't I have just multiple chains? Like it's quite possible that the chain could have several forks. Like you attach on one part of the chain and this chain just bifurcates and starts forming another sub chain. So what would happen in such a case? Like how do we reach an agreement? So such complicated stuffs we discuss under this Nakamoto consensus, so which forms the very idea like all nodes should reach an agreement on the next block that needs to be added to the decentralized ledger. So basically, let me give you the idea of how Nakamoto consensus works before going into this mining thing, proof of work. So what Nakamoto consensus says is that there should be a leader. So now you can think like there were several transactions which is proposed in the network. Now I am the one who gets selected as a leader, and I just pack all these transactions in a block, and then I say that hey, this is the block that needs to be mined, not mined, added to the network, and let us agree that this should be the next block which is getting added. So suppose you see that this red, blue, and green, these three people, they have got all their transactions and they have formed a block. But in this particular round, the red one gets selected as the leader. So what it will do is like it will inform that I am the leader and this is my block. So what others need to do is that they need to agree that yeah, this is the leader who has proposed the block and this should be added as a part of the chain and as the next block. But this is very utopic and looks very realistic, like everyone is too honest and they are agreeing to what the leader is saying, and the leader is good and leader is always adhering to the rules and it's not doing any wrong stuff in the network. So but why is this hard? I mean in reality, like no, people are rational, they could be malicious. I mean that's why cryptography exists, because people are malicious, people always tend to attack and find loopholes, and they are always intending to make profit. So that's why it's like in this altruistic setting things look good, but when how can things go bad here is like nodes may crash or they may be faulty. So consider in this case the red one is live and green and blue they have just crashed out of the network. So it doesn't make sense to have an agreement. Like agreement or no agreement, red is the leader. And in the same in the same setting is that leader may be malicious. So consider he has a transaction which says that I pay Alice 10 coins, and again this same 10 coins he is adding a transaction which is being paid to David. So now it's like he may be malicious and trying to push two transactions, like does a double spending, so he's trying to equivocate. So how do we prevent that? And network is imperfect because there may be latency. Here it looks like in just one hop I can just send to green, and the blue one the set of transactions, like red one can send. But in reality there is thing like how I will mention like how these blocks are propagated in the network. So there could be delay, there could be the thing that there's too much of congestion with the information flooding, and that could lead to a block reaching a particular node in the network at a very long time. So there could be high latency in the network. So given all these factors in mind, we will see that how Nakamoto consensus can be realized. So any questions till this point, like just understanding the basic Nakamoto consensus?
Madam, could it be possible to demonstrate the implementation so that better understanding could be done? How it is working?
Implementation, yeah, I don't have a slide which gives you a demo like how Nakamoto consensus work, but you can maybe request your like organizer like Ravneet ma'am to like see whether we can have this a practical session, because since it's limited to 2 hours, I just giving a theory talk. But I would be happy to show you a demo, because then I can actually like maybe show you in the how it works in the Bitcoin testnet, like how much time it is taken, because obviously you cannot maybe see like in the user interface like how this consensus is going on. But if I go in the backend and then I show that I propose the transaction, and if I am minor, then how much time it's taking, then maybe I can just give you an idea how this thing is simulated. But now in this presentation, I don't have anything which can give you a practical idea or a demonstration. So sorry for that, but you can ask your organizer for a separate session on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I continue.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So now, as I mentioned, the first thing is that how do we elect a leader? So in a permissionless setting, so you could say that let us have something, a protocol by which like in a maybe if you go in a shop and then you need to stand in a queue, you're given a token, so something like that, or maybe a lottery based system, like we have just these chits with token numbers and shuffle and select any random ID and then assign and say that this ID gets selected in this particular epoch, and that means this is the leader. So some there is inherent randomness, assuming that it's this lottery generation protocol is not tampered or it's executed correctly. So now the key idea of consensus is that given this random node is picked, so this node proposes the next block in the chain, and what this block will contain is hash of the previous block, on top of which it is extending. And so suppose I am the leaders and rest of the network, so what other participants are going to do, their duty is to check whether the block they are going to accept or reject as a part of the chain. So how can they show their acceptance is that they just add the block and extend the chain by adding this block, or they may just simply ignore this block and maybe accept another block as a part of the chain. So they have the right to either accept or reject whatever I have proposed as a leader. So in this so how do this agreement is reached, like how does one decide that this block is whether it will become a part of the chain or not? So we have this thing called as longest chain consensus. So what does longest chain consensus say? Like suppose, as you can see that there in the Alice, suppose this participant A has proposed 2 blocks, so this he's trying to spend the same amount to a party B and also to a party B A dash. So this looks like a double spending attack, because he's trying to spend the same coins to 2 different participants. But now in the network, we will see that we have to agree on any one of the blocks. So the rest of the participants in the network show their agreement by mining on top of any one of the block. So what can happen is that we go for this longest chain consensus. So what is longest chain consensus say? So suppose there are 2 such transactions pushed by this malicious participant Alice, which is trying to spend the coin CA to 2 different participants. But what rest of the network will do, they will start mining on top of this transaction red, marked in red. So now this transaction, the other transaction, that is coins A being spent to B, gets invalidated, because we see that this coin is already spent to A dash. That means there is something malicious going on the other side. So we ignore this block. That means we are showing rejection, and rest of the network starts mining on this particular block. That means this transaction is valid, and this transaction can go out, can be considered like all right, and the other one is discarded. So that's what is that. Honest nodes will extend the longest valid chain. Like instead of mining on this two chain, I mean, of course that's possible, and I will discuss how attacks can happen. But as of now, consider that if the majority is extending on the one side of the chain which is longer in length compared to the other, we consider the other one as the valid one. All the blocks, all the transactions in the blocks chain is considered as valid. So what does
But
longest
in
chain
case
rule
of
say? Yeah.
but in case of network traffic, if the first block was already present in traffic, and second one is actually worked, then what will be the case at that point? The second one will be
Okay, so
actually
you
the valid
mentioned
one.
that the first block is due to network traffic, it's not there, and the second block is getting added, right? CA to B.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
is absolutely fine. So suppose these two transactions are legit, so it's fine. Like I can spend my coins to Alice, I can spend my coins to Bob. So in that case, this transaction sounds legit, apparently, until and unless you are spending this. So if you say that the green one is ending up in the chain and the red one is like sort of lost and no one is seeing that, then this transaction will be discarded. So, but the thing is that if this green transaction is now considered as valid and people start mining on top of this one, so in the next time if this red transaction appears in the network, this will not be considered as legit, because miners will see that if they try to check validity of the transaction, they will see that this green transaction already got lodged into this ledger. So that means there is a type of double spending attack. So that's basically the role of the verifiers in the networks. So not only they agree to mine on top of a particular block, provided the transactions in this new incoming block is legit. So when they will find that this red transaction is in a block which is not legit, they will definitely discard it and not add this block on top of the longest existing chain. And even though there is like if the chain has increased on top of this green block and the red one comes and tries to create a fork, in a way it will turn into an orphan transaction. Like this will be discarded because no one will be rest of the miners in the network will always mine on top of the longer chain. So that's what the longest chain consistency is saying. Like even though this block pops up later, it will be discarded.
Thank you.
So does that answer your question, or?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so as I was saying that what does longest chain rule say? So double spend probability decreases exponentially with the number of confirmation. So that's the thing, like as per common heuristics, like in Bitcoin blockchain, 1 hour confirmation is good enough to have a guarantee that your transaction is safe. And now because a transaction is just saying that transfer of coins. But suppose want to hand over some tangible goods. So suppose now I want to buy Tesla. I want to buy Tesla and I am doing this transaction in Bitcoin network. Obviously, Tesla is a very costly stuff. So I would wait for a longer amount of confirmation. Rather than if you want to buy coffee, you might be happy with just one confirmation because you don't care, like even if you are cheated, because the price is quite nominal. And if for Tesla, maybe you don't want to go for a risk of 6 confirmation, maybe you would wait for 100 confirmation, because that would guarantee that to redo this entire chain for the 100 confirmation is very difficult thing. Like apparently as of now, since I haven't discussed proof of work, it might look like it's a very simple thing to redo entire stuff. But even without proof of work, you have to just see that you have to tamper the hash values and change and see that you find a separate different block which is again get a collusion and the hash remains same, but you can push a different block. So all these reorganization is a quite complicated thing. So if for buying a Tesla you're going for 100 confirmation, that is giving a larger guarantee. That's why it is mentioned that with number of blocks confirmation, this probability of double spending decreases exponentially. And what does Nakamoto consensus say? That the cryptographic primitives were basically for making the blockchain tamper resistant. That definitely you can go back and change your transaction because of this Merkle tree, hash functions, and hash pointer data structure. But this consensus is needed to prevent double spending. Like I at the same time cannot spend my coins for two different transactions in two different blocks. But again, you are not 100% sure whether your transaction is in the consensus branch, but the confidence increases with time if more the number of blocks which is getting mined on top of your transacting block, and longer the chain, the higher the confidence you will have that there would be no double spending. So this completes Nakamoto consensus, but I didn't discuss like how you elect a leader in a permissionless setting. So let me discuss that, like because as I said that in a permissionless setting, anyone can come and join with any number of public keys, because it's not that I can have just one node in the network. I can have multiple such nodes, new identity at the same time in the network. So basically this is sort of Sybil. So Sybil comes from a medical, the term comes from a medical condition where there was this particular person who had, I think her name was Sybil. She had a multiple personality disorder. So that means like I can choose multiple identities at the same time. So this is allowed because no one knows like whether who am I in this network, right? So if it's something like I go for a lottery or a token based system, I can just flood the network with my identities in the network, and to ensure that every time with high probability whatever token is selected in the lottery, it's me who is actually possessing the token. But that's going to actually making the network centralized, contrary to the concept of that this is a decentralized network. So how do we ensure that I am actually not hogging the network by just simply putting out multiple such identities of mine in the network? So basically the idea to select leader in a permissionless setting is must be based on something very expensive resource. So something like I have to spend my computation power to get elected as a leader, or maybe I need to spend some amount of coins, like they need to have some stake ownership in the network to get selected as a leader, or I need to allocate some disk space. So which is like the proof of space, which needs to say that if I say I put out 400 GB in the network as the allocated disk space, I have a higher probability of getting selected as a leader. So first one, proof of work, is the one which is used in Bitcoin, as well as Ethereum was also using it. And proof of stake, like Ethereum 2.0 in the latest upgrade, they have moved to proof of stake. And proof of space is used by Spacemint, Chia, and other such type of blockchains. So so since I'm discussing just Bitcoin network, so I will just stick to proof of work based leader election in permissionless setting. So what does proof of work say? So you need to you need to spend some of your computation resource to get elected as a leader. So what you do is like a node must solve a computationally hard puzzle to become a leader. So like how do we design a hard puzzle? I will come in the next part of the slide. So what are the advantages with this? So the leader selected, it's proportional to the amount of computational power it is investing. And also at the same time, no one knows like who will be selected as a leader. Like you can see in the network that this particular like this Bitcoin pool mining chart is always there, and you see that this is the hash rate of this particular miner or something, and with high probability this miner might be selected, but that's not guaranteed, that's not deterministic, that's probabilistic. You can say that I may get selected next time, but I cannot say with probability 1 I will get selected, someone else might be selected as a leader. So that's why it is unpredictable. And multiple IDs do not give me any advantage until and unless I'm willing to spend out computation power. So I may have many such identities, but then I need to solve this tough puzzle, and that would require me to invest some of my computation power. And as I mentioned, that equivocation in this part would be costly because you need to reorganize this entire chain, which and if you want to rewrite the history, because now you have to redo this computational puzzle solution for this entire chain, and that's a hell lot of work. So how do we design this computation puzzle? So yeah, before I go to the computation puzzle, any question regarding this idea of proof of work, like why it's playing an important role in the network? Any question on that? Hello?
Hanji ma'am.
Yeah, any question on this proof of work? Before going to how this puzzle thing is being constructed, if you have any question, you may ask.
Okay. I invite the audience to please ask the question from madam if you have any query.
Maybe I can take it at the end as well. Like if you think you need some time to think on this, and maybe I just go on.
Just a minute.
Okay, so if you have some question, just stop me in between. So let me discuss how this cryptographic hash function is working for this designing of the computational puzzle for proof of work. So as I stated that hash function is having this puzzle friendly property. So what is puzzle friendly property stating? It's like I break this pre-image of the hash into two parts. So previously I was stating that the one part was being selected from a uniform distribution, and I'm guessing the other part is really tough, given that you have the output mentioned. So over here as well, suppose we have some threshold stated. So how it works in Bitcoin is specifically that um, you need to choose a nonce, provided the hash which is obtained has at least 16 zeros or 17 zeros in its prefix. So basically, this is the threshold or difficulty level which is being set. So now what I do, like so instead of basically specifying the pre-image exactly, like it is very difficult to find the exact value for a I need finding the pre-image for this exact value is quite tough, as we have shown the one witness property of hash function. So instead of that, we say set a threshold. So you can have any output, but provided this output satisfies the condition of like having 16 zeros in the prefix or 17 zeros in the prefix. So basically, this is setting the difficulty level instead of exactly getting the value which is required. So basically, this nonce is serving as a proof of work. And when if someone is lucky enough to find a nonce for a particular block, they will just add it and propose the block in the network along with the set of transaction. And how this threshold is chosen. So threshold is chosen such that the block is mined successfully on average once in every 10 minutes. So it's not very hard and fast that every 10 minutes you are going to get a block, but with time the difficulty level might be adjusted. So suppose now it's like people are mining it quite fast within 1 and 2 minutes, then the network will go reach an agreement that the difficulty level needs to be adjusted so that it becomes a bit tough. And now suppose it has become so tough that it's become 20 minutes, then you will try to reduce the difficulty level. So this way you try to set a threshold on average within 10 minutes. So even though the latency is also a factor, so you try to restrict it uh, within a feasible bound. So like it should be guaranteed that within 10 minutes you are able to find a proper block with a nonce so that you can propose and this block gets mined in the network. So what are the properties of proof of work? So same as like the hash function. So it should be easy to verify. So given the nonce and the block hash, I have specified like in the nonce and the block hash is the pre-image of this particular hash. So once this nonce and block hash is provided, I as a verifier need to check whether it's satisfying the particular threshold, like whether it's having 16 zeros are there in front of the pre-image or not, and all this stuff. Not in the pre-image, the output which is being which I get by hashing this pre-image. And also it should be difficult to compute, like it follows from the puzzle friendly property as I stated, that it shouldn't be easy to get the nodes. So you should spend some computation power to figure out the nodes. And parameterizable cost means that mining is difficulty can be adjusted, so it's not static. And probability of successful mining is proportional to the total hash power which the miner has invested in the network. So higher the hash power he has invested, higher is its chance to find a valid block. And so I had mentioned Nakamoto consensus. Now I discuss proof of work, which is actually simulating this leader selection thing. Basically, how can I select a leader? So there is randomness in how the leader is selected because no one is centrally assigned to select a leader. The leader is selected based on this beautiful protocol by which, like, how much power you invest, whether you can solve this puzzle, and if you can, you are being selected as a leader. So it's like everyone is competing, and the one who is able to find the correct answer is automatically selected as the leader. So how this Nakamoto consensus along with proof of work is enabling agreement in the network is new transactions are broadcasted to all the nodes, and each node collects new transactions into a block and start mining on the longest chain. And node that solves the puzzles first is leader and broadcasts this block with the hash. So that's how the node is getting selected as the leader. So one who solves the puzzle first. And the last point is that upon receiving a new block, this verification of the block is quite easy. So it's not that while verifying a block, I spend too much of my computation power, but that would actually disincentivize verifier to actually verify the block. So there is another line of research which talks about my verifier's dilemma, like whether I should invest my energy in verifying a block or whether I should start mining a new block. So that's a really interesting area of research. I'm not going into that, but as of now, I'm considering that verifiers in the network are good, and they will check whether the transaction is valid, hash difficulty is the nonce is actually satisfying this hash difficulty, and then they reach an agreement that they need to add this block on the longest chain. And if these conditions hold true, then the node becomes a part of the ledger. So till here, Nakamoto consensus with proof of work. If there is any doubt, stop me, or else I take a 1 minute pause and I will start with the block reports. Like, it's not that nodes are altruistic and they will just start mining on top of blockchain. There should be some incentive in place, and which should allow them, like, they should be gaining something out of this. And also, this is also a way by which currency in the network is generated, cryptocurrencies. So I will talk like it's not that the cryptocurrency is supplied in infinite amount. So there is a cap on the amount of Bitcoin which is circulated, else there won't be this property of scarcity holding. Because if there is infinite amount of supply, Bitcoin will lose out its value. So I will discuss like how we break up block rewards into maybe block creation fee and the transaction fee, until what time point block creation will be a lucrative task, and when transaction fee will be overpowering block creation fee. So I take a pause for a minute and let me know if you have some doubt till this point. Hello?
Hanji ma'am.
Any doubt, or shall I proceed?
Ma'am, you can proceed.
Okay. So block rewards. So as I stated that why should a miner block in the network? It should have some incentive for doing this thing. So when you mine a block, so there are two parts, two incentives attached. So one is that when I mine a block, I get a block creation fee. So creator of the block, that is one who has successfully solved the puzzle, like found the pre-image of this or found the correct nonce to the particular hash. So they get to include this special coin creation transaction in the block. And also the currently the value is fixed to 6.25 BTC. So it started with a block reward of 50 BTC, And starting from 2009 onwards, every 4 years, this block reward is slashed by half. So in 2013, it was 25. 2017, it was 12.5. And again in 2021, it became 6.25 BTC. So every 4 years, this block rewards got slashed. The reason why every 4 years this block reward is slashed by half is that, as I stated, the amount of bitcoins in circulation is limited to 21 millions. So by 2040, this block rewards will be slashed and will be reaching a value close to 0 BTC. So at that time, and then at 2040, there might arise a situation that miners may not be incentivized to mine blocks. At that time, the other part of the fee, that is the transaction fee, will start playing a role. So what is the transaction fee? It's like, suppose you put some transactions into the block. So transactions are nothing but exchange of coins. So I can say that I am purchasing a good of maybe zero point 0.1 BTC, but then the transaction fee is like, I can put an input of 0.15 BTC and the output is 0.1 BTC. So this 0.05 BTC, the extra, is acting as the fee for the miner who has mined the block. So this is the transaction fee. So every block has these two rewards. So now let me discuss how this Bitcoin transaction looks like. So Bitcoin transaction encodes transfer of Bitcoins between entities. This is actually the purpose, like exchanging coins. So as I mentioned, there could be two types of transactions. So one is the normal transaction, by which you just transfer coins from one party to the other in hope of getting some goods or service. And the other is the coin-based transaction. So basically I mentioned that this block creation fee. So how is this fee being claimed? So in when you are mining a block, this will have two types of transactions. So first one is the coin based, and rest are the regular transaction coming from other different parties. So this coin based transaction is the one which is actually guaranteeing this block creation fee which you are going to obtain. So currently this coin based transaction gives you a reward of 6.25 BTC, and I will discuss how these two transactions are different in structure. So, but in a normal regular transaction, how it looks like, any input is basically serving as the output of any previous transaction which had occurred in the network. So basically Bitcoin follows this concept of unspent transaction output model. So basically any input to this transaction is, you have to figure out whether particular input which you are using are unspent or not. If so, then you can accumulate and form as an input for your particular transaction, and this could be spent based on some script or condition, some condition which is put into the transaction. So basically you have this redeem script. So this redeem script allows you that if you satisfy certain condition, only then you can claim and spend this particular input, and which is forming the output of your next transaction. So that's what is said, that a destination of transfer is called as output. A single transaction definitely can have several outputs. Similarly, a single transaction can have multiple inputs as well. And when previous transaction outputs are specified as source of Bitcoins, they are called as inputs. So now let me go to how this coin-based transaction looks. So coin-based transaction has got no inputs. So it has got just, it should have at least one output. So there is no input because this is the source of Bitcoin generation, like currency generated in the network. And there is no previous transaction output which is latched to it. But you get this block reward and any transaction fee which is there or provided. So yeah, and also this Coinbase transaction have some challenge script. So basically, a challenge script is like a puzzle, and not like the hash puzzle. Maybe some condition, like maybe you can say that if you provide your signature, and if you can maybe solve something like 1 + 2 = 3, and provide a redeem script with your signature, only then you can claim this Coinbase transaction. So something like that. So this there is a challenge script, and you have to provide this corresponding redeem script with your signature, and also which validates that you are the correct claimer of this particular coins. Next is like, how does a regular transaction look? So regular transaction is a bit different from this Coinbase, because regular transaction are what is ensuring exchange of coins. So it's not generating coins, it's actually leading to changing of ownership of coins. So a regular transaction input has this three items. So first is the transaction ID of the previous transaction, which is actually mentioning that which inputs you are going to use. So the index of an output of the previous transaction. So the first output is the transaction 0. So as you can see, this input 0 is basically which prior transaction you're using. So on the left hand side, there is an output 0, which is actually forming the input 0 of the right hand side transaction. And the output 1 of the left hand side is for is the input of the transaction on the right hand side. And also you can see this each output has a challenge script like C1, C2, and corresponding to that you have a redeem or response script, like whatever term you use. So R1 is the answer to the challenge script C1 and R2 is the response to the challenge script C2. So once this response script is correctly provided, this actually makes you a legitimate spender of this particular outputs. So similarly, essentially each input in a regular transaction unlocks the bitcoins associated with the previous transaction. And if a output of the previous transaction is referenced by an input, all the bitcoins associated with the output need to be spent in the transaction. So basically, when you providing the response script is allowing you to spend the coins, and in the next time there is a certain type of double spending, anyone can come and actually see that already a response script to this challenge script is existing. That means this will, if I try to spend the coins once again, it's becoming an illegitimate transaction. And also this part is actually basically trying to say the law of conservation of coins. So that means the output of the regular transaction have same format as Coinbase, so I'm not going to that. So what thing must be guarantees is that you are not creating coins out of thin air. So like in a regular transaction, it should be the case that whatever summation of the inputs should be greater than or equal to the summation of the output. So basically the difference between the summation of input and the output is actually the fee. So obviously you can assign a fee of 0. In that case, the summation of input should be equal to the summation of output, but it should never be the case that sum of your input coins is actually lower than the sum of output coins. In that case, the transaction will be deemed as invalid, because validating such a transaction would mean that you are creating some excess coin without actually going into mining or something. So this is not allowed. So basically you should have law of conservation of these coins, like it happens in any normal transaction, like what we do with our normal currencies. So now I go into the Bitcoin scripting part. So I won't discuss much, but just an overview. So how the scripts are nothing but smart contracts. So as I said that all these are self-enforced. Like no one is going to come and say, a third-party auditor which comes and say that these are the terms of the contract and you should adhere it. So how is it being done? So it comes into play when two parties want to exchange money. So basically, like this challenge script is provided as a contract, like a contract instantiator, and you provide a response script to this challenge script. So when you run on blockchain, smart contracts eliminate the need of a trusted third party. So like in the physical world, you need maybe a lawyer or someone to attest the thing that you are actually adhering to the terms of contract, but these things are totally eliminated in blockchain setup. So in Bitcoin, the smart contracts are like scripts. So use a specific scripting language called as Bitcoin script, and it follows a stack-based structure. So I'm not into going into the details because time is limited. So like how this script looks like is like it consists of an opcode along with a value. So opcode basically specifies the function, like what function you need to satisfy. So something like in by default, the script condition for spending the output is that the public key that hashes to this particular address and must sign the message with the corresponding private key. So in case I need to spend the coins, my response script is nothing but just the I must provide my public key and I must sign the spending transaction as well. So this is just a simple condition. There could be other ways to other complicated opcodes, like I just check whether am I allowed to spend the coins within after a certain time point, like after 24 hours I can spend the coins, or maybe I need cooperation of some parties to spend the coins, like opcode which checks for multi-sig. So suppose I am in a I have 2 or 3 business partners and need everyone's consent. Only then maybe I can spend the coins. So there are several such combination of opcodes which allow you to perform specific functions, and by this way you can encode much more complicated logic into this smart contracts. So Bitcoin scripting is not Turing complete, so it has certain limitations. But Ethereum Solidity smart contracts are way more better because it allows you to encode complex logics, and that's why DeFi and all these applications are a reality on top of Ethereum. So now I discuss the Bitcoin unspent transaction output model. So unspent transaction output model. So we are not going for any account based thing, right? I cannot say that I am the person who is holding this amount of coins, and then you try and see you are spending my coins and something like that, because my identity is not tagged in the network. So suppose like if I want to spend a certain amount, so I need to check like which of the outputs are not spent. So when an output of a previous transaction is unlocked by the input of a later transaction, all bitcoins in the output needs to be spent. These outputs can be in two states, like either spent or unspent. So UTXO refers to the outputs in transaction record in the blockchains which have not been unlocked by the inputs of the later transaction. So there is no such response script which is being provided to the challenge script for spending these particular outputs. So I show you a structure. As you can see here, like suppose there is a transaction of 1.5 BTC that needs to be made. Now for spending, I need to see that do I have sufficient unspent coins which can form a balance for spending this for doing a transaction of 1.5 BTC. So I see yes, in my wallet I see there was some output having 1 BTC and another with 0.75 BTC. Now how do I do a transaction of 1.5 BTC? So in this I spend 1.75. So 1 BTC is total input and corresponding output of 1 BTC. And the next 1.75 I just spend 0.5 BTC out of that, and 0.25 BTC I send it as a change. Like you do this thing, like suppose you have purchased a item of 80 and you give coins of 100, not coins, the 100 rupees to the shopkeeper, and he returns you 20 rupees. So in similarly what you do is like you provide 0.75 BTC and you get a change of 0.25 BTC. So again this unspent output of 0.25 BTC gets attached to your wallet. So, but then you successfully spent 1.5 BTC, and the one who is claiming your coins needs to provide a response script. So every regular transaction in the new block unlocks UTXOs from the transaction in the previous blocks, and it is creating new UTXOs. So here the new UTXO is that 0.25 BTC, and 1.5 BTC is the new unspent output because you have spent this 1.75 BTC. And out of that, 0.25 is now unspent, and 1.5 BTC can be unlocked by some other participant. So set of all UTXOs on the blockchain represents an ownership record of all bitcoins in circulation, because since it's not tagged to your identity, it's not account based. So you need to figure out like how much coins do I have is based on how much unspent outputs I have corresponding to all the public keys I have in the network. And also during a blockchain fork, different network nodes may consider different branches of the fork to be longest branch. And in that case, the set of UTXOs may differ from the local copy, because when there is a fork, you might tend to have different views of the network. But since we consider that longest chain consensus will ultimately be reached at some point, the view becomes consistent after some time lag. So any doubt till here, like regarding Bitcoin UTXO scripting or something, like I can take a pause. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Hanji.
Shall I continue?
Ma'am, how long it will be there?
Not much. I think I have just 10 more minutes, right?
All right, ma'am. Actually, okay, ma'am. So by 4 it will be over.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah, I will just give a brief overview because
Okay,
later
actually,
parts.
when I stop the recording, it will take some time to save the data. So that's why it will take time. So fine, ma'am, continue with your session. Continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So yeah, now I will discuss the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network structure. So as I said, since it's a permissionless setting, so it has got a random topology, so any nodes can join anytime. But the restriction is that you forget a node if it's not responding for the next 3 hours. So how does a node join the network? So suppose in this network, a node 8 marked in green needs to join this network. So it will just start polling any random node in the network. So it is now asking node 5 to send the set of addresses. So of the node 5 and also the peer nodes attached to this node 5. So 1 and 7 is attached to the node 5. So 5 will return its own address and address of its peers 1 and 7. So 8 gets knowledge of that 5 has got two such peers 1 and 7. Now it will send request for peer nodes of this node 1 and node 7. So 1 will return address of 6 and 5 and 7 returns address of 5, 3 and 2. So 8 forms connection with 5, 1 and 6 because it's his choice, because it can go on polling and different nodes will return its own set of neighbors. But since there is a bandwidth limit, it will just connect to few set of nodes instead of all the nodes which are returned as the peers in the network. So in this case, 8 connects to just nodes 1, 6 and 5. And now let me highlight like how this transaction is propagated in the network. So basically it follows the technique called as flooding. So now suppose node 4 says that, hey, I just heard a new transaction. Also, this is also a method for propagating the block as well, not just transaction. So suppose it says I heard a new transaction, A is transferring coins to B. So it will just propagate this message to its neighbors 3 and 2. Next, what 3 and 2 will do, 3 will send it to its neighbor 7 and 6. And again 2 will send its message to neighbor 7. 7 I will see that it is receiving 2 such copies of transaction A to B from 3 and 2. It will discard 1 and keep just 1 copy of the transaction. So this transaction flooding, I mean, basically with peer joining the network and transaction flooding. So let me give you an estimate. So currently there are 15,226 nodes that are reachable in the blockchain network, and size of the network is quite large. You need a disk space of about 440 GB. So, but as you see that since it's the transaction flooding is going by a gossip protocol, so there could be some latency in the network. So it is quite possible that the transaction pool, like the view of the transaction which is with node 4, it can be quite different from what transaction view with node 1 has. So since it's a decentralized network, no one is having a control on the network. It's quite possible you and I can have different set of transactions in this network. Next, like how this transaction should be relayed. So transaction, only valid transactions with matching script structure should be relayed in the blockchain. So these are like the sanity checks. And as I mentioned that in this case, like 7 here's the same transaction from 3 and 2. So once it has heard the transaction A to B from 3, it's not going to relay the same transaction to node 5 when it hears the same transaction from 2. So do not relay a previously heard transaction to avoid infinite loops. And also if 7 notices that there is a double spending, like A has already spent coins to some party C, so it's going to do a sanity check and see that this coin is already spent, so I shouldn't spend and so I shouldn't allow this transaction to be relayed in the network to avoid double spend. Next, like how I discussed like how Bitcoin is secure. So previously I had mentioned like this longest chain consensus rule is allowing security, like higher the length of the chain, more the number of blocks which is getting confirmed on top of my block, more the confidence. But now you can see like what should be the length of what should be the number of confirmations. So Bitcoin says that I should go for a 6 confirmation. But suppose I say that it's introducing a lot of latency because I need to wait 1 hour for to just see that whether my transaction is confirmed in the network. So let me do a 1 deep confirmation rule. Like once a block gets mined on top of my block, then I consider this transaction to be legit and I transfer goods. But the problem is that with if you this gives a low guarantee because anyone any adversary can come and mine on top of this another transaction CAB, because the chain length is not much. So the amount of computation overhead invested is quite low. So basically going for this one deep confirmation rule is a foolish thing. Also, there could be something called a selfish mining attack. So selfish mining attack is like once you find a block, you do not reveal into the network. You suppose like in top of this red transaction block, a selfish miner just starts mining new blocks. So I just go into this slide of selfish mining. So as you can see, this block 3 is not revealed in the network. The adversary will start mining on top of 3, like block 3, block 4, block 5, block 6, etc. And honest adversary has mined this gray colored block. So but maybe when the honest miner pushes its gray colored block, the adversary comes up with this sub chain of length 3 with block 3, 4 and the 5. So this becomes the longest chain, and that basically invalidates the block proposed by the honest miner. So this is called as selfish mining. That means you are withholding the block and mining a chain selfishly hidden from the public view, but so as to invalidate other honest transactions, because your chain becomes longer. So selfish mining refers to malicious miners only. So dishonest miners performs information hiding and revealing the blocks in a very selective way, so obtain an unfair reward which is bigger than their share of computing power spent, and also confuse other miners, because other miners will mine a block but they are wasting the resource, right? Because this subchain becomes longer and other transaction in this honest miners block gets invalidated. So so that's why it's good to go for a higher like a longer length confirmation rule. So that's why to counter such attacks, we go for this K-deep confirmation rule. So how this K-deep confirmation rule works? It shows the probability of the transaction being pushed out of the long chain decreases exponentially as K grows. So as Bitcoin says that we need a K to be of order 6. So with 6 confirmation, the probability that there would be a double spend is very negligible, like 0.01. So there is some math involved, like based on the mining power of adversary, like how this mining power is playing a role in this KD confirmation. So I'm not discussing in details because time is limited. But the basic idea is that adversary mining power shouldn't be more than the mining power of the honest party. So that's why there is a 51% attack mentioned in the network as well. Like if an adversary is having a 51% hash rate in the network, then all these KD confirmation and stuff gets ruled out, because it can perform any sort of attack and it will definitely have an advantage and go on adding blocks. So basically this KD confirmation rule says that provided the honest party's mining power is greater than the adversary's mining power, then with K being tending to infinity, then probability that the double spending attack will be prevented is with very high probability. So now I just show you a graph which says that how large K should be. So depth of K, so as you can see that with number of 10, if the depth is 10, then you get a confirmation of around 0.001, 10 to the power minus 3. With this probability, there would be a double spending. And if you increase your depth K to 40, 50, then you get a higher confirmation, like with very negligible probability of 10 to the power minus 5 or 10 to the power minus 6, there could be an attack. But note that it is stated that this plot is designed provided the adversarial hash power is just 30%, I mean lower than the 51%. So that if there is a like what is a 51% attack, so it can successfully mount this double spending attack irrespective of the number of confirmation. Like as I previously mentioned in this mathematical part, like if I didn't explain it, but you can see that if this adversary power is greater than the my hash power of the honest party, then this probability doesn't hold, I mean this becomes negative. So in any way this KD confirmation rule fails. So anytime whenever you see a mining pool which is being larger and moving like towards the 51% hash power rate of the network, then people become skeptical and the community forces this mining pool to like break up and have lower hash powers. as there could be this such attack which makes the network centralized, and there could be a lot of double spending and people will lose trust in the network. So as that's why it's mentioned that ensure that no mining pool acquires 51% of the total hash rate. So I conclude my talk stating that despite the benefits, there are several drawbacks. Like one point is that scaling Bitcoin is not at all scalable. So as Bitcoin currently allows just 7 transactions per second compared to Visa and PayPal, which is allowing around 40,000 transactions per second. So it's not at all scalable. And if the network is disrupted, that like if there is a 51% attack, the entire blockchain network, there could be a lot of double spending, and this people will lose trust in the network. And also Bitcoin is quite restricted in terms of the scripting languages it is using. So Ethereum to some extent mitigates the problems which is seen in Bitcoin, but also there are some problems existing in Ethereum as well, and that's why there are still so many lot of improvement proposals which is being added by the community. So with this, I conclude my talk, and in the end, I have mentioned certain references. Like first is the Bitcoin main paper by Satoshi Nakamoto, and then there are several good courses of Bitcoin and blockchain cryptocurrencies. If you want to know more about that, you will get really good material, slides, PPTs, and videos, and also some really open research problems and what is currently the state of the art. That's all mentioned in these such videos as well. So with this, I conclude my talk, and I thank you for your patience because there was too much of problem while I presented my talk and didn't go smoothly. But still, you just you kept with and you were really good enough to bear with my these nonsense. So thanks once again. And if you have any